Justice served. Putin's downfall looms as Russia edges towards civil war. The failure of the Russian army on the territory of Ukraine has led to the loss of many Russian soldiers' lives. At the same time, several Russian commanders have been convicted and arrested for various incidents. This week's arrest of a Russian general, as a result of the mutual testimony of two senior officials, marks the sixth arrest of a senior Russian military officer this year. Vadim Shamarin, former deputy chief of the General Staff of Russia, provided information that led to the arrest of Major General Alexander Ogloblin, former head of the Russian Military Communications Department. According to Commercant, the Russian investigative committee announced that Ogloblin was charged with allegedly accepting bribes totaling 10 million rubles, approximately $78.744, from a telecommunications firm to secure defense ministry tenders. Ogloblin was previously sentenced to 4.5 years in prison in February 2022 for embezzlement on unrelated charges, but was released early after agreeing to testify against his superior, Shamarin, for allegedly receiving procurement bribes from manufacturer Perm Telephone Plant Telta. The report included the following: Major General Ogloblin, who was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison for embezzlement, was able to be released early thanks to his testimony. However, according to Commercant, Ogloblin was rearrested after Shamarin's testimony. Many analysts suggest that this is probably a revenge move. According to Commercant, Shamarin revealed that he shared the bribe with Ogloblin as part of a deal with investigators. Britain's Ministry of Defense said it suspected the arrest was part of a wider operation by Russian authorities to arrest officials brought in by Russia's former defense minister Sergei Shoigu. 5 officials were arrested before Ogloblin in April. Timur Yanov, a deputy defense minister overseeing major military construction projects, was arrested on suspicion of taking a large bribe. Later, Shamarin, Major General Ivan Popov, and Lieutenant General Yuri Kitov were also arrested on bribery charges. In May, Vladimir Vetkin of the Defense Procurement Department was arrested and charged with abuse of office. John Foreman, Britain's former defense attaché in Moscow, believes that Russia's intelligence agency, the FSB, has been investigating the case for a long time. He mentioned that the map of those arrested shows that the noose is getting tighter. The official stated that no one is sure what he is actually doing, mentioning that Shoigu was isolated in his new role in the National Security Council. On the other hand, fierce clashes between the sides continue. Ukraine has repeatedly targeted Russian oil depots in an attempt to disrupt fuel supplies to Vladimir Putin's frontline army and destroy its energy infrastructure. Footage released shows dramatic moments when a Ukrainian drone crashed into a Russian oil depot, causing a massive explosion and a terrible fire. Kiev has successfully increased the range of its drones, which can strike facilities in Russia's interior. The Kremlin has been unable to stop the attacks despite the strength of its air defense systems and electronic jamming capabilities. In the latest attack, Ukrainian kamikaze drones targeted an oil depot in Inet-Irad-Stavely territory. The facility is located about 800 kilometers from the nearest Ukrainian-controlled territory. In the footage captured by security cameras, a fire broke out at the facility, followed by a sudden explosion and a large fireball. The footage was shared on social media by the Boza Telegram channel, which reportedly has close links to Russia's intelligence services. Regional Governor Vladimir Vladimirov said emergency teams arrived at the scene and intervened. After the incident, no casualties were reported in the massive explosion. The Russian Defense Ministry also claimed that 83 drones were shot down overnight. They were allegedly destroyed in the KSK Bryant, Vons, Oral, and Belgorod regions, as well as the occupied Crimean Peninsula. Putin's generals are forced to resort to increasingly desperate measures to prevent Ukrainian drones from destroying oil depots. The latest idea is to cover energy facilities with anti-drone nets, which it is hoped will provide more protection than regular air defense systems. Photographs of the Katna refinery near Moscow show nets draped over the facility that was hit earlier this year. The refinery is one of Russia's 10 largest, supplying about 40% of the needs of Moscow and the surrounding region. In the following hours, the Russian military showed its brutality. Russian forces stepped up indiscriminate drone strikes on civilians in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson, killing and injuring scores in what locals described as a human safari. Unlike elsewhere on the 600 m long front, Russian forces in Kherson are just across the river from the city and are using small drones to harass the population, either by crashing into targets and detonating them or by dropping grenades and small camouflage mines. The situation is quite unique compared to the rest of Ukraine, where Russian troops must use longer-range weapons to reach civilians. Humanitarian operations and city services, such as fire trucks and buses, appear particularly threatened. But children on bicycles and elderly people gathering in markets are also affected. Officials said Kherson was the first major Ukrainian city to be seized by Russia after the full-scale invasion in 2022 and remained occupied for 9 months before being liberated. However, even after Ukrainian troops swept the city, the Russians repositioned their forces a short distance across the Dnipro River and kept up the pressure with regular firing, which locals described as a form of punishment. Residents reported that the last few months, even under occupation, have been the worst. Between July and October, drones and mines killed 133 people and injured 1.350. According to the Kherson Military Administration, the Russian Defense Ministry did not respond to questions about the drone targeting policies of its forces in Kherson. Many people reported unbearable stress and anxiety due to attacks that could happen anytime, anywhere. The governor of the region, Alexander Ogloblin, said that Russian forces have carried out about 7,000 drone strikes in the Kherson region since August. He stated that the government was providing electronic warfare equipment to military units to help combat the problem. Ogloblin described the situation as targeted terrorism, stating that they see and understand who they are attacking and at the same time boast on social media with videos of how they kill and injure civilians. Solomon Omar, head of international cooperation at the Ukrainian Center for Security and Operation, a Kyiv-based think tank, stated that Kherson is under unprecedented pressure as Ukrainian troops are unable to keep up with the flights of Russian drones. We see this as another method of repression and terror against the civilian population to force the Ukrainian authorities into negotiations. Yevhen Patak, a volunteer with the aid group Global Empowerment Mission, said. He noted that ambulances were a high-priority target after city buses and civilian vehicles. The attacks create an urgent need for firefighting resources, as drones equipped with thermite trigger fires, and drone pilots attempt to ram responding fire trucks, shooting at everything that moves. Patak mentioned that social media pages linked to Russian military units warned civilians that they would attack all vehicles in the area, and some circulated maps of the targeted area in the form of wide red stripes along the river. Officials and observers noted that most of the attacks took place in this red zone, but also further afield. Residents recounted how drones had salted the entire Kherson region with small anti-personnel mines. The mostly plastic munitions, PFM-1s, are often called pedal mines because of their distinctive and harmless shape. They explode when stepped on and are usually green or brown to camouflage them on the ground. Locals reported that pedal mines are ubiquitous and that they communicate sightings to each other on local social media pages. Russia is not a signatory to the 1997 Mine Ban Treaty, which bans such weapons, and has used them extensively in war. There is also evidence that Ukraine deployed them on the battlefield despite being a signatory. In light of all this, another critical development has taken place. The US has imposed restrictions on hundreds of targets and targeted sanctions, signaling that the US is determined not to be evasive. According to a statement from the US Treasury and State Departments, the decision imposed sanctions on nearly 400 entities and individuals from more than a dozen countries. A State Department official told Reuters that the action was the most coordinated move yet against third-country trafficking. It included sanctions on dozens of Chinese, Hong Kong, and Indian companies, the most affected countries in a single package so far. The official said, also included targets in Russia, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Thailand, Malaysia, Switzerland, and other countries. This move follows Washington's attempts to prevent Russia from avoiding sanctions imposed in 2022 after its invasion of Ukraine, which killed or injured thousands of people and left cities in ruins. The United States has repeatedly warned Russia against procuring joint high-priority products, advanced components including microelectronics deemed by the United States and the European Union as likely to be used in Russia's war in Ukraine. The official, speaking on condition of anonymity, stated that this should send a serious message to both the government and private sectors of these countries, indicating that the US government is committed to countering the circumvention of our sanctions against Russia and continuing to pressure Russia to end the war in Ukraine. The Treasury Department has sanctioned 274 targets, while the State Department has identified more than 120 targets. The US Department of Commerce added 40 companies and research organizations to its trade restriction list for alleged support of the Russian military. The United States and our allies will continue to take decisive action worldwide to stop the flow of critical tools and technologies needed by Russia in its illegal and immoral war against Ukraine, US Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Admo stated in a statement. A senior administration official noted that the action taken was intended to signal that the United States would take action against Indian companies if